Good morning. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Governance Committee meeting of the CCIDA, CREDC, and CRC. We're at the Center for Innovation and Economic Development, 214 Central Avenue, Dunkirk, New York. We're also streaming live via YouTube and Zoom. It's March the 25th at 10 o'clock. We'll start with roll call. Gary Henry's here. Amy Harding.
Here.
Thank you. And we've already received the minutes from the March 26th, 2024 meeting. Do we have a motion to accept those minutes? Amy?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. I'll second it. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the minutes have been approved. And we're going to move right into new business. And I'd like to welcome Elizabeth from Harris Beach. She's with us this morning. She's going to give us a presentation on some of the housekeeping resolutions, and there's a lot of information. So we appreciate you coming here and doing this in person. It makes it a lot better for us.
Of course.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Nice to see everyone. So we'll find that we have 3 housekeeping resolutions in front of us, each one for each entity. The housekeeping resolution is the same as the one that was adopted last year, just modified for changes obviously that have occurred in the past year. You'll see in attachment A, that is going to be your annual parish reporting. Attachment B is going to be the appointment of officers to the board, committee appointments, appointment of agency counsel, depository banking institutes, mission statements, and performance measures. And then attachment C, the tentative meeting schedule, which I believe was approved in January, but just for housekeeping purposes. We added it in here and you can find it in the back of the binder. And then our second resolution of the day is going to be the approval of policies, which I believe might be further back, but I will give a brief overview. We have several policy changes that we are going into for this year. We're proposing, we have 7 policies that were updated to conform with best practices, new legal requirements, 2 policies that are required by the public authorities law to be readopted every year, even if they have no changes. There are no changes to those 2. And then 2 new policies to conform with legal requirements. You will find a chart midway through the binder that summarizes the changes. I believe it is after the blue page. If anyone has any specific questions on any changes, or Mr. Chairman, if you'd like me to go further in depth on the changes, I'm happy to do so.
I think you're going to do that at the IDA board
Perfect.
meeting and then the CREDC and CRC.
Perfect.
And I think for this meeting, we're only doing the housekeeping resolution.
Perfect.
If I could say one thing, the only changes to the officers was when Brad retired, Dan Heitzenreiter took his position as the vice chairperson. And then Dan was in the role of secretary. So he moved up to vice chair, and Amy assumed Dan's position as secretary. I think that's the only, the one other thing was now Shelby is the CFO and Rich was the CFO last year. I think those are the only changes.
Mark, I would suggest on attachment B of the housekeeper resolution that Shelby's name be on the transaction committee in my mind. Going forward.
Well, it is. If you go to the next page.
Did I miss something?
Yep. The next page at the top.
Well, there it is. Yeah.
But we had your name still on it so that you can.
I didn't see the next page. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, was there any questions about any of these housekeeping resolutions? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve the resolution to recommend these housekeeping resolutions to the full board?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And I'll second it. All those in favor say aye. Aye. The resolution has been approved. Any old business to come before the governance committee? Hearing none, we'll consider the committee meeting adjourned and we'll meet back here at 10:30 for the board meeting. Thank you.
Quickest meeting ever. 6 minutes.
Good morning. I would like to welcome everybody to the County of Chautauqua Industrial Development Agency Board of Directors meeting. This is our annual meeting. We're at the Center for Innovation and Economic Development, 214 Central Avenue, Dunkirk, New York. We're also streaming live via YouTube and Zoom. It's March 25th at 10:30 in the morning. We'll go ahead and start with roll call. Gary Henry's here. Did Dan make it? No. Sagan Sheffield Smith?
Here.
Tom Harmon?
Here.
Amy Harding?
Here.
John Healy?
Here.
Welcome. You should have already received the minutes from the February 25th meeting, had a chance to review those. We have a motion to accept those minutes.
So moved.
Thank you, Sagan. Do we have a second?
I can second it.
Thank you, Tom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes have been approved. We have many distinguished guests with us here this morning, so it's, it's like the all-star team. So we're certainly glad to have Dave and Justin here with BWB. We have Elizabeth Hughes with Harris Beach, who's joined us this morning. And of course, we have PJ Wendell, the county executive, with us as well. PJ, did you have anything you wanted to share with us this morning?
No, I'd like to welcome John to the board. It's another position we'll be filling in the future, so excited.
Thank you. We'll go ahead and move right into new business. A, the 2024 audit presented by Dave and Justin from BWB.
Wonderful. Thank you for the introduction. Never been called an all-star, but appreciate it. Thanks, Gary. What we'd like to do, Justin Eisman he's going to walk us through some of the highlights of the financial statements. Just for the board's information, there's a real nice process that you have. You have an audit committee that Seguin and Gary are part of. And so prior to the audit commencing, we have a nice meeting where we talk through a little bit about, what's been happening at the IDA as far as transactions and business, and a really productive meeting to really plan the audit. So that's conducted. We take some of the information that's discussed during the course of that meeting, and that helps us form our audit. And then ultimately, we're here to present the financial statements, which are your financial statements. This is your document. Boy, there's a lot of great information in here, and it kind of talks a lot about some of the great things that you're doing within the county. And our job is to, basically assemble information and support that looks at that information and ultimately provide you an opinion. And that's what we're here today to kind of go over those reports. And again, give you a little bit of a highlight for the 2024 year. Yeah. So.
All right, so I'm going to start. If you want to look at the binding report and go to page 1 of that report. So really the whole point of us coming out and doing this is to provide our audit opinion. This is a clean, unmodified letter. So it's the highest level of assurance you can get from us in terms of an audit opinion. So it's overall, a great year in terms of the audit and the processes and what we saw. We were able to provide a clean letter, and that's really a testament to Kayla, Rich, Shelby, the whole team putting together a good report for us. The next couple pages, I won't go over them, but it's pages 3 through 7 are what's called the management discussion and analysis. I think that's probably where you'd direct somebody to go if they wanted to read through the financials, get a narrative picture of how things went. It kind of discusses each of the funds and how the year started out at a high level. But I'm going to jump to page 8, and we'll talk a little bit about the bottom line and numbers that happened this year. So page 8 is the financial statement, the balance sheet for the IDA combined. There's 3 big things to talk about here. One, you got a healthy cash balance, about 7 million. So you're doing pretty well cash balance wise. Middle of the page, there's the other asset section. That's where your notes are. So obviously the biggest number on your balance sheet are those notes. You have 19 million outstanding, actually over 20 if you factor in the current. So $20 million loaned out to local businesses. And you're collecting interest on it and you have really good experience with those loans. You know, over the years, we've had some loans that didn't do so well, maybe had to write off at times. But right now, I think there's one loan that is kind of in question. And other than that, out of all those loans, which every single one is detailed in the notes, if you wanted to go and look, there's one note out there that's, you know, not paying right now. So I think really, really good experience this year. On the bottom half of the page, the other thing to talk about on the balance sheet that's kind of a big number is that unearned revenue. So it's 5 million in total for the IDA. 3.7 of it's on CREDC or on the IDA itself. 3 million of it's the North County, so building industrial park. So the work being done there that was supplied to, you know, start up that project. And then there's a little bit left in the broadband project that's sitting on that line as well. On the CREDC side, there's 1.2 million. It's mostly community block grants actually at this point. So I think over 700,000 of it's the deferred loans, the loans that these companies would be given if they meet the requirements. That's the majority of what's sitting in that balance. But then you do have some like Ralph Wilson grants, things like that have balances left to be spent. But you know, those two areas, the notes and the unearned and the grants are where we spend the crux of our time. You know, we do a risk-based audit approach. So we look at your numbers beforehand, we figure out what we want to focus our attention on. And that's really where we focus our attention, your notes and the unearned revenue and the grants you receive. You want to go to the next page, we'll talk about, you know, how the year turned out bottom line. So you can see there the IDA, 400,000 of revenue. You're currently at a net position of $6 million. So, you know, healthy net position. The revolving loan fund, not a whole lot of activity, really break even, $87 of income. LTEC and EDA, the two loan funds, those actually lost 44 and 93,000. But we did, because you loaned out extra funds, what we do is we reserve against 20% of those loans. So we up a reserve. So how we do that is we recognize a bad debt expense on your books. So it's a kind of a paper transaction to reserve against those future loans in case they were to default 20%. Without those entries, those two funds would have made 237,000 and 122. So really, in actuality, they performed well this year. They had net income before those entries, but they're sitting at, you know, $9 and $8 million of equity at the end of the year. And then your CREDC fund has got 640,000 of equity. You made 93 this year. It's mostly on the CREDC itself side. The grants really are pass-throughs almost in a way. You have revenue coming in, you have grant expense that matches it. So really where that derives income is 93 from the CREDC. Any questions on those? And I just thought I'd stop on the next page 10, to talk about one line. And I thought, you know, we talked about a little bit at the audit committee meeting, and I thought it was, you know, a pretty interesting thought. I hadn't really put it together before, but middle of the page, the net change in cash. You know, that's $4 million that is spent from the IDA. $1.5 million of it was returned on the broadband project to the county. So really there's about $2.5 million that you put in the community this year. I think that's just a really high level, like, way to look at what you guys do. And I think that's a big number, and that's, you know, should be pretty proud of what you've accomplished. Okay. So then the next couple pages, supplemental schedules and notes. We're not going to go into detail on them, but if you were to look through here, as I said earlier, every single note you have loaned out is described in here, what the payment plan is, when it will be paid off. All of the unearned revenue buckets are described in there. So what you have left to spend, but nothing we're going to stop and go over, but there's a lot of good information in here if you ever want to. All right. More supplemental schedules. If you get to, I believe it's page 32 is the next couple letters we have to provide you. So the first letter here is the government auditing standards letter. Because you're technically a government entity, we have to provide what's called a yellow book audit or a governmental audit. This is a clean letter this year, nothing to report on. Yellow book audit is a little more focused on internal controls and compliance with laws and regulations. So no issues there in terms of internal controls from what we saw or any issues. On page 34 is the uniform guidance, or what used to be called a single audit letter. And this is because you receive federal funding. So at this point, your EDA CARES loan fund is the only fund that is a federally funded. The LTAC was defederalized a couple of years ago. So we're going to have to always do a single audit for you as long as that EDA CARES fund is federal monies. And that's what we tested. Sometimes you get community block grants if they reach a certain threshold. You do have to test that as well, but we didn't get enough this year that we had to. So we only tested the EDA CARES fund. This is also a clean letter. So, really good job. And we're going to go to the page 37 or 38. I want to kind of, it is a clean letter this year, but last year we did have a compliance finding. It was related to loans related to buying equity. So, if you were to do that, you have to discuss and kind of prove that that there's a likelihood or very much likelihood that that entity would be closed or moved without your involvement. So we noticed a loan last year that, you guys had approved that was for an equity purchase, but you hadn't really discussed that in the board resolution for it. Well, you took care of it at last year's board meeting that we were at. And then what we noticed is there's another loan this year that had equity, and you did it the right way in May. So you enacted that audit proposal or audit recommendation. And it was, worded the same way that we would have recommended. You specifically spelled out that, that entity would be likely to be moved or closed if you didn't get involved. So we thought, really good job. That's kind of the point of us coming here is to provide some recommendations. And so we really enjoy when we see it enacted by the board. So thank you. Great job.
Well, thank you for,
So then there's two other letters. I'll talk about the first one. It's titled, "We have audited the financial statements," as the first sentence. That's the governance letter. It's a little bit thicker. So this is a letter to you as the board that we're required to provide to just let you know that there are no issues in completing the audit. There's no issues in terms of withholding of information. We had access to everything we needed. It's just a normal communication letting you know the audit went smoothly. Now, there is one kind of thing to talk about on here, and it's at the back of it. It's the audit difference. So there is one audit difference. We report on this audit difference every year. So in accrual accounting, when you have accrued payroll at the end of the year, technically it hasn't been paid yet, but it's, related to the prior period. It should be recorded as a liability. It's been the position of the IDA to never record that as a liability. We don't think it changes the reader's opinion of the statement. It's not a large enough number. It was a $5,000 change to the bottom line. So we're fine with it being left out. We just do have to communicate it that that is something that happens. And then the final letter we provide is called the management letter. So this is where we, provide items that maybe don't rise to the level of finding, but maybe are best practices. There are two comments on here. The first one is the same comment from last year. Actually, it's on the service contracts with the county. So last year we talked a lot about the ARPA money that came through and whether or not you were a pass-through entity or a contractor. And the county kind of takes a stance that you're a contractor, which means you don't have to follow a lot of the rules required for the single audit on those grants, which provides you a lot of ease in terms of your reporting on your money on your side, things like that. But we just want to keep it out there that, there is some risk there. If somebody ever came in and audited the county and said, we don't agree with that stance, that it would flow to you that, you're not a pass-through entity and you would have to follow the single audit rules. So there is some risk there, just letting you know. I think you typically follow all the rules anyways, even if you're not, under the federal single audit bucket. But, there is some risk there that maybe at some point in time, somebody might ask you to do some more reporting on those funds. And then the second comment is on cash balances. So you had, $7 million, as I said earlier, in cash. We noticed you were only earning about 1% interest on that cash, which right now, if you went to the bank, you could get about 3 or 4 on money market or bond or certificates deposit, which you are eligible for. You can't get into riskier investments, but the more safe investments you are allowed to be a part of. And you could earn, a significant amount more interest on that. 1% to 4%. It could be a significant difference in the amount of earning interest you have on your cash balances.
Is working on that?
It might, you might just have to call the bank. They're not going to offer it up until you call the bank and say, hey, why are we only earning 0.7% on this? So. Any questions?
Good job.
Yeah, great job.
Yeah, I would just like to thank Dave and Justin. Been a long time, Dave, and I won't be here for the next one, so thank you for all the help professionally and personally, and you guys have done a great job for us. Thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Rich was mentioning, I don't know when the first year that you took over, Rich, but what was the total equity
Fund balance was 700.
for all the different entities? $700,000. So, you look at this, where you are currently and all the loans and the projects, I mean, incredible. So well done and congratulations to Rich. Good job, well done too.
Could I have a motion to accept the audit? It's presented by Dave and Justin.
So moved.
Thank you, Sagan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the audit has been accepted and we certainly appreciate all your hard work. It's excellent as always, just very thorough.
Thank you. Now the fun begins. So we actually have to get this uploaded to a federal website and Shelby will certify it and submit it. And then also you have a big Paris report. It's a New York State report that's also a fun document with a lot, even more information than this. So that's the next step that'll be submitted as well. So great.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next, we'll move into new business B, housekeeping resolution, presented by Elizabeth Hughes from Harris Beach.
Hi, everyone. Good to be here. So you'll see in this housekeeping resolution, it is pretty similar in form to the one that was adopted last year. We will go over several changes to the resolution from last year. So attachment A is just going to be the adoption of your annual parish report, as was just mentioned. I know Shelby and Keel are working very diligently on that. Attachment B is going to be appointment of different officers of the board, officers of the agency, and appointment of depository institutes, council, adoption of mission statements and all that. This is largely unchanged. I believe there is one change to officers of the board. There are two changes to officers of the agency and authority, which I will speak to when we go into policies, just policies that required us to appoint two new members. And then, of course, we have Shelby now as our CEO and Rich as our past CEO. And then moving into attachment C is just the tentative meeting schedule, which was approved at the January board meeting, but is it here just for good measure? You could find it at the back of the book laminated. Mr. Chairman or Mark, do you have anything to add to that overview?
Just to remind, like I did in the governance committee, so we had a governance committee before this meeting. The governance committee approved the housekeeping resolution. And I spoke to the fact that the only change is really on the board committee appointments was that when Brad Walters retired and resigned his position, Dan Heitzenreiter, who was the secretary, moved into the vice chair person position. And so that left a vacancy for the secretary in the governance committee that Amy took. And then the only other thing was, like Elizabeth said, Shelby is now the CFO.
Any questions from the board on the housekeeping resolutions? Hearing none, Sagan, can you move resolution B1 for us?
Absolutely. Resolution 03-25-25-01, housekeeping resolution.
And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tom. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Gary Henry votes aye. Sagan Sheffield Smith.
Aye.
Tom Harmon.
Aye.
Amy Harding.
Aye.
John Healy.
Aye.
The resolution has been unanimously approved. Next, we'll move into new business C, review of policies and resolutions, again presented by Elizabeth.
Hello again, everyone. All right, so in this resolution, which I believe is right after tab 2 in your book, this talks about policies that are either going to be amended, several changes adopted just because it's statutorily required to, and then 2 new policies. So I'm going to do a very high level overview. All of the policies mentioned, you will find attached after. So if there's this blue sheet in tab 2, the page right after that provides a chart, an overview of all the policies, changes that were made to several of them, and then policies that were not changed at all. And then you will find red lines of the changed policies immediately behind that. So you may review. But as a high level overview, we have 7 policies that we updated to conform with new legal requirements, BO best policies and recommendations. Those are listed as the first 7 here. I will say the 2 that are to conform with legal requirements is your FOIL policy. There's a new requirement requiring notification of employee disciplinary records in the event that there's a FOIL for them. So we just updated that in the policy. And then the sexual harassment policy was updated by the DOL. So your policy now tracks their model policy. Turning back to what I said earlier, is the appointment of 2 new employees in the agency, 2 roles. We have Shelby, who is our human resource officer. That was previously mentioned in the sexual harassment policy. And then we now have Kayla as our records management officer. So turning into that, we have 2 new policies, which we have a continuity of operations policy required. This was an after effect of the COVID pandemic. So just to have, in the event that we do have another public health emergency, to ensure that the agency's operations are unaffected by that and they have a plan in place. And then we also have a record retention policy, which is our record management officer. Every public authority is required to have a record retention policy in New York State. And there's one schedule that is referenced in the policy that retain your records for generally 7 years. Other than that, we just have our investment and deposit policy and our real property disposition policy. These 2 policies are completely unchanged, but the public authorities law do require us to readopt them and review them every single year. So we did just that. No changes, but they will need to be readopted today. So if everyone a minute to look through the red lines and the chart, and just if anyone has any questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Just real quick, these were all sent out, any of the ones that changed and the new ones were all sent out to the board, red line version, so they could see how they change. And just real high level, we have 7 policies that have been amended, to comply with the ABO policy guidelines. 2 that are being readopted, which we have to do annually. Now, in the past, we readopted all of the resolutions, but we don't need to do that each year. Just these 2, the investment and deposit policy and the real property disposition policy are the only 2 that we need to readopt annually. And then the two new ones that Elizabeth talked about. And then there's no change on 9 policies.
Yep, that is correct. And you'll see that I should have mentioned that this last box in the chart is the 9 policies that are unchanged because it's changed. There are no new legal requirements and you guys are compliant as is.
So Harris Beach spent a lot of time going through each and every policy to make sure that we're compliant.
Especially Elizabeth, she had to get up to speed
Yeah,
Yeah,
on our whole entity.
yes.
yeah, thank you for
Of course, I'm happy to
your
help.
deep dive.
Yes, good experience. Does anyone have any questions? Any of the policies?
I love your cheat sheet.
Yeah,
Thank
no,
you very
that's great. And I
much.
appreciate the, the red line, format, sending those out to the
Yeah.
board. So we all received them a week ago. So you have a chance to go through and look at it, but, to try and figure out what changed, it'd be almost possible. But with the red line, you could, it's pretty clear, well, this is what it was, this is what we have now. So, it makes it a little easier to understand. So very well done.
Thank you very much.
Tom, would you move new business C1 for us?
Absolutely. Resolution 03-25-25-02, policy approvals.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Amy. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Gary Henry votes aye. Sagan Sheffield Smith. Tom Harmon.
Aye.
Amy Harding.
Aye.
John Healy.
Aye.
And resolution has been unanimously approved. Next, we'll move into the executive director's report.
I have very little, again, on the audit what great work. Kayla, Shelby, Rich, Justin, Dave. I mean, really, when you look at this and take a look at it, really, it's a piece of work, a piece of art. Really is incredible. It really tells a story about the IDA. So I just wanted to, guys, great job. And then the staff in general is, I watched like for a week before board meetings, Jeanette especially running around like crazy, putting everything together, puts all of this together. Incredible. So, the staff in general does great work, but Jeanette, call out to you. Good work. Yeah.
Really? Oh, well done. Next, we'll move into treasurer's report.
So I will be quick as well because we didn't want to throw a whole bunch of numbers at you in different format than would be in the financial, the audited financials. I just want to, reiterate what Mark said. This is a great report. We had a clean report, which is phenomenal. The only finding really was the accrued payroll, which we'll see every year just because of how we do it, and it's a 1% change. So it's very nominal in nature. I also want to reiterate kind of how they said, put $2 million back into the community, which is amazing. And also on the P&L, where we see the interest income, that's just more income that we can replenish all of those loan funds. So it was a really great year, and it was a nice report with a lot of information. So Kayla and I really have the parish reports buttoned up. All we have to do is upload the digital copy of this report that we just reviewed. Once we get that, we can submit and move on to the next
Year.
Next month. Yep.
Start
Next month.
preparing for next year.
Yeah. Next month, we will provide Q1 financials and we can go through all of that. Like I said, last month, number one, we don't want to throw a lot of information at you that, would just be repeated. And we didn't want to provide Q1 unless we had the audited financials for 2024 in case there were findings that would change the numbers. The only real entries that we will be making to 2024 are the bad debt reserve to tie to the financial statements because they put it through their model and it's very detailed. So there is a little bit of a change there, but that really is it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And, the audit committee, already has met with BWB and gone over this audit, but we go over it in even more detail during the audit committee. So, we kind of go through every single page line by line. And so we try to keep it a little more high level here for the board meeting, but, awesome job by the IDA in having everything correct. And then also by BWB doing their audit. So much appreciated. At this point, I would entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing the financial or credit history of a particular person or corporation. In particular, I would like to discuss the status of our loan portfolio, the financial and credit status of some of our borrowers. Do I hear such a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Tom. Do we have a second?
A second.
Thank you, Sagan. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll go into.
Oh, really?
Reservations. So just sign up anytime.
Oh.
That's good.
Sagan, all
I didn't want to fill this
Huh.
We are back in open session, and I would like to report that there were no actions or votes taken during an executive session, and therefore no minutes of the meeting were taken.
In executive session, we discussed pending litigation of the Silver Creek School project. And, but there was no action taken.
Silver Creek Apartments.
What did I say?
Silver Creek Apartments.
Yeah, Silver Creek Apartments.
So we'll move right into that old business, D, Silver Creek Apartments. Mark already spoke about it, and Amy, could you move resolution D1 for us?
Yes. So resolution 03-25-25-03 supplemental resolution, Silver Creek Apartments LLC.
We have a second.
Second.
Thank you, Tom. We'll do a roll call vote. Gary Henry votes aye. Sagan Sheffield Smith.
Aye.
Tom Harmon,
Aye.
Amy Harding,
Aye.
John Healy.
Aye.
The resolution has been unanimously approved. Do we have any other business to come before the board? Hearing none, we'll consider the meeting adjourned. Our next meeting will be April the 22nd at 10:30, and we'll be back at the BWB building in Jamestown. Next, we'll move right into CREDC. And so I'd like to welcome everybody to the Board of Directors meeting for Chautauqua Region Economic Development Corporation. We're at the Center for Innovation and Economic Development, 214 Central Avenue, Dunkirk, New York. We're also streaming live via YouTube and Zoom. It's March the 25th at 11:35. We'll do roll call. Gary Henry's here. Sagan Sheffield Smith.
Here.
Tom Harmon.
Here.
Amy Harding.
Here.
John Healy.
Here.
We've already received the minutes from the February 25th meeting and had a chance to review those. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes? Thank you, Sagan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. We'll go ahead. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes have been approved. Next, we'll move into new business A, housekeeping resolution. Again, presented by Elizabeth from Harris Beach.
Hello again, everyone. So the housekeeping resolution for CREDC is identical to the housekeeping resolution presented previously in the IDA meeting. It's the same board appointments, the same changes made to that, the same splitting, and the same meeting schedule just for CREDC, obviously, instead of the IDA. So are there any questions on this resolution at this time?
Hearing none. Amy, can you move new business A1 for us?
Yes, resolution 3-25-25-01, housekeeping resolution.
Do we have a second?
Get second.
Thank you, Tom. Go ahead and do a roll call vote. Gary Henry votes aye. Sagan Sheffield Smith.
Aye.
Tom Harmon.
Aye.
Amy Harding.
Aye.
John Healy.
Aye.
And so the resolution is unanimously approved. Next, we'll move into new business B, review of the policies and resolutions, again, presented by Elizabeth.
All right, so very similar to the IDA, it is the same policies with one exception. There were 3 changed policies that were IDA specific. So for CREDC, we only have 4 change policies, and those are going to be the Code of Ethics, Conflict of Interest, FOIL, Procurement, and Sexual Harassment. The other 3, again, were IDA specific. We have the same 2 policies that we are statutorily required to adopt by the Public Authorities Law with no changes, the investment and deposit policy and the real property disposition policy. And then we also have the same 2 new policies for CREDC, the continuity of operations policy and the record retention policy. So are there any questions at this time on CREDC specific policy changes?
Hearing none. John, can you move new business B1 for us?
Resolution 03-25-25-02, policy approvals.
And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Amy. Do a roll call vote. Gary Henry votes aye. Sagan Sheffield Smith.
Aye.
Tom Harmon.
Aye.
Amy Harding.
Aye.
John Healy.
Aye.
And the policy approvals are unanimously approved. We have an executive director's report. Treasurer's report. Okay.
Needs to approve the audit.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead. The audit is the same as the one that we already reviewed through the IDA. Was there any additional questions for CREDC? Can we have a motion to accept the audit?
So moved.
Thank you, Sagan. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The audit has been approved. Any old business to come before the board? We'll consider the meeting adjourned and we'll move on to the CRC. I'd like to welcome everybody to the 3rd meeting for the CRC Board of Directors. We're still in Dunkirk at the Innovation and Economic Development, 14 Central Avenue, streaming live via YouTube and Zoom. It's March the 25th and it's now 11:40. We'll go ahead and do roll call. Gary Henry's here. Sagan Sheffield Smith.
Here.
Tom Harmon.
Here.
Amy Harding.
Here.
John Healy.
Here.
You should have already received the October 22nd minutes, had a chance to review those. Do we have a motion to accept the minutes?
I'll make the motion to accept.
Thank you, Tom. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, John. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes have been approved. We'll move right into new business A, housekeeping resolutions.
Hello again, everyone. So this housekeeping resolution for the CRC is the same in form for the IDA and for CREDC, board appointments, council appointments, depository, mission statement, parish report, and meeting schedule for the year. Are there any questions on the CRC specific resolution?
Hearing none. Sagan, can you move new business A1 for us?
Sure. Resolution 03-25-25-01, housekeeping resolutions.
And do we have a second?
Second it.
Thank you, Tom. We'll go ahead and do a roll call vote. Gary Henry votes aye. Sagan Sheffield Smith.
Aye.
Tom Harmon.
Aye.
Amy Harding.
Aye.
John Healy.
Aye.
Resolution has been unanimously approved. We'll move into new business B, review of policies and resolutions.
All right, so this policy resolution is the same as the critical one that we just went over. So it is those same 4 policies with changes based on best practices and new legal requirements, the 2 new policies, and then the 2 policies that we are statutorily required to readopt annually. Does anyone have any CRC specific questions on policy updates for the year?
Thank you. Tom, can you move new business B1 for us?
We can, resolution 03-25-25-02. Policy approvals.
And do we have a second?
I'll second.
Sagan? We'll do a roll call vote. Gary Henry votes aye. Sagan Sheffield Smith.
Aye.
Tom Harmon.
Aye.
Amy Harding. John Healy.
Aye.
And the policies and resolutions have been unanimously approved. Do we have a treasurer's report? Do we need to,
We need to approve the audit.
the audit?
CRC.
Yep, needs to approve the audit.
Okay, it's the same audit that we've already gone over. Do we have a motion to approve the treasurer's report? Or not the treasurer's report, the audit report?
Make a motion to approve the audit.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Do we have a second? Okay, John, all those in favor of accepting the audit report, we say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the audit report has been approved and we'll consider the meeting adjourned. Thank you as we went through all these different resolutions and policies, got them all approved and see you next month. Thank you.